Hello, much maligned part of politics, of course, as as I've done many talks on many different politics. Might as well talk about the subject of feminism. Now, it's not really, of course, been a subject that I'm that interested in. Okay, be frank, but the title is, of course, not a statement. It is a question. So the question is: was feminism undone by dirty socks? And that was a question asked in a magazine called the Radio Times, which is basically like a TV listings magazine in Britain for the BBC. Now, this is also going to be part of a series called Virtues, and one's going to be on feminism, the other one's going to be on patriarchy. Okay, so another question came up in my mind as I was watching something on wolves and the way that people assess the roles of different individuals and different jobs. Okay, and a man called Sean Ellis was talking on the subject of the alpha male. Okay, and he asked the women in the crowd, do you know any alpha males? No one put their hands up. And he said, do you believe you have an alpha male as a partner? And no one put their hand up. And then he asked the men in the crowd, do you believe in the concept of alpha male? And everyone put their hand up. He said, oh right, well, the wolf is the alpha male. Okay, he's strong. Okay, but he's only the alpha male because the female wolf lets him be. And that basically boils down everything, because everybody knows who rules the roost in any real relationship. Okay, and it's not the bloke. All right, it's very rarely that it's the bloke. But this brings the question of why there was division of roles. Why was it that women started to do housework, and it was the men who did the jobs outside? Okay, well, let me just take like a social history as an example. Right, when my family came from Bermondsey, okay, and there's a very sort of working class, lower middle class area, and a lot of people were associated with the docks, but most people didn't actually work on the docks. But at that time, in the time I'm talking about is the 19th century, only really working class women or lower middle class women worked, and they worked dirty, horrible jobs in factories, just like the men, and then they still had to come home and clean the house. But most of the household chores were actually done by children. Okay, children looked after the younger children, and that's the way it was. And just like how men protected their wives at that time from what they believed was the threat from other men to their wives, that was also another step forward from women simply being possessions. Okay, so in the feudalist times, women would be sold off to anyone and everybody, and marriages would be dissolved not by her choice but by others. You see this in Muslim and Jewish societies today in the Middle East. I'm not talking about the Jewish tradition of the Vienna tradition of Jewish humanism, but now I suppose I don't really have to worry about the Jewish lobby because I've probably already annoyed the feminist lobby as well by just making this vid. But anyway, these are all sort of different progressions forward. Okay, so when the idea came along that women's roles were separated from men and became focused on the household, that was in a sense a step forward from women being torn up in mills and women and children working in mills, because there were some jobs that men just simply couldn't do because they couldn't put their hands weren't big enough to put inside gears and things like that. Okay, but let's take it forward to there are extremes in any form of politics, but what I would agree with is, why is it that in a society, especially a society today, where a lot of fathers have abdicated their roles completely and run away from their families, and of course there's good reasons for that. I know many people who are divorced and it's not necessarily their choice or their fault. It just happens. There's pressures on economic pressures on families that are intense, as well as social and emotional pressures. But the necessary thing is for women to have as much wages as men, and there's a clear reason for this in wider context of society and national community, because if women can't earn that, they're not going to have children, and then eventually the countries might as well, as Angela Merkel herself said, who's the Chancellor of Germany, said, we might as well switch the lights off, you know. And who, if with falling birth rates, who is going to provide the pensions for people? Also, I think male politicians, especially with the election coming up, ignore women's vote at their absolute peril, because by the time people reach their 50s and 60s, almost 60% of the wealth is actually in women's hands at that age group. So in the long run, men lead more violent, shorter lives, and women end up getting the lion's share of the wealth. So it begs a question to say, who really is in control of society? And I would say actually that women are in control. Women control how society works. If you take from personally, right, I buy clothes for myself, but women buy clothes because of the way they might think other women or look at them, or men look at them, and that's just the way it is. So if you looked at like programs to do with economics or business or clothing or artworks, it's a lot of the preferences, all the decisions within a household are made by women. So in a sense, it's women that are creating. Men might build the houses by and large, but it's women who decide what goes in them, and so therefore they control society and our economic decisions. Okay, leave some comments. I'm sure if any women will watch this video, they will leave some, so they always have an opinion.